Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. I'll tell you all, at the last webinar I did this, my house line rang right as I started. So hopefully that won't happen tonight, but thank you all for joining us. My name is Lauren Santamaro, and I am our campus recruiting manager based in the Chicago office. We have a great webinar for you tonight, Social Impact and Sustainability, with some great panelists to speak to their experience. So before diving in, just a couple logistics here. We will have some time for Q&A, so you can see the Q&A feature in the bottom right screen there. Please send your questions to Caroline Viola. She's on the line to help us and field all of those. And then if we don't get to your question, please use the email address there, careers.ug@kearney.com. We'll be sure to get back to you. So with that, I will actually pass it over to Elizabeth to start us off with some introductions.
Hi, everyone. I've been really looking forward to this session, so excited to get to hear from all of you and your questions at the end. But my name is Elizabeth Clifton. I am a manager, and I'm aligned to our consumer industries and retail practice. I am based out of the Chicago office, although I live in Minneapolis. I've been with the firm for about 3 years, and we are also going to give our COVID facts, like what we've been doing for hobbies. And so my recent hobby has been studying Spanish. And so I've even worked with people in the firm in our Colombia and in our Mexico office to set up some time to practice. So it's been really fun. I'm going to hand it over to Elena.
Super cool. I love that. Hey, everyone. My name is Elena Rohner, and I'm a business analyst out of the New York office. I joined about this time last year, and I did my summer internship 2 years prior in 2017, and I'm now aligned with the energy and process industries practice. And my new hobby that I've picked up is having to learn how to work out without access to a gym. And so I've been discovering and exploring the Pilates videos on YouTube. So that's my fun fact for COVID life.
Is Bennett Johnson. I'm an analyst out of our Chicago office. I started with the firm last September, and in fact, a week from now will be my 1-year anniversary. Woohoo! I am not aligned to any practice. I'm just a generalist right now, and my COVID fun fact is that I've taken up biking recently. But if any of the rest of you live in Chicago, you'll know that the summer is quickly coming to an end, and my time for biking with it as well. I'll pass it off to Will.
Hi, everybody. My name is Will Ritter. I'm an associate out of our Chicago office. I've been with the firm since 2014 as a business analyst. I do most of my work in the consumer industries practice like Elizabeth, and I also work on our global social impact and sustainability team. So it's wonderful to be able to share the things that we do here and our experiences, and then looking forward to hearing what your questions are towards the end. With that, let's get into some of the content here. So social impact and sustainability, our vision for this work really comes down to being the difference for our people, our clients, for our communities, and for our planet. You'll see a couple of our ambitions and targets on the bottom half of the page there. I'll point out a couple. On the client side, around building sustainability propositions for our clients. We're in the process of activating social impact and sustainability teams in 100% of our offices and working on doubling pro bono work for everybody to engage in. We've created a $1 million matching program from the firm for organizations supporting social justice and racial equity. And on the bottom there, you'll see we've committed to setting science-based targets on our greenhouse gas emissions. I believe they were just approved. So you'll see that involves a 30% CO2 reduction and a commitment to 100% green energy by 2030. A little bit about how social impact works across our firm on the next slide here. You'll see we think of it in 4 pillars. So the first is around driving impact with our clients. The second around creating partnerships, both globally, for example, with Ashoka, and locally through our pro bono and other work. Third, around developing thought leadership, both internally and with our partners, such as Kearney's Energy Transition Institute, the Global Business Policy Council, and the World Economic Forum. Those are the acronyms that probably you wouldn't have known. And then the last pillar there, finally, the firm building piece is really walking the talk. So this is about creating a community for the folks who want to be that difference, developing programs like our social impact externships, which Elizabeth will talk about a little bit more in a second, and holding ourselves accountable through internal auditing and scorecards. We're going to spend the coming minutes here going through each of these pillars in a bit more detail. So for our first one here on client engagements, I'll pass it over to Elena.
Great. Thanks, Will. So if we could flip to the next page. Next page. Awesome. So, as Will mentioned, the first pillar where we as a firm really can have the biggest impact is through our client engagement. And so that means that when we work with clients, we are really striving to engage with them on both, social impact topics, but also integrate this into our value propositions and our practices. And so, in order to keep this a little interesting, I want to, demonstrate how we kind of live into our social impact 3 E's by sharing an example of a project I've been working on this year, which I think will kind of bring it all to light. So if we can maybe then go to the next page. So for the last 6 months or so, I've been working with an industry trade association that is responsible for the northeastern home heating fuel industry. And if that is something you've never heard of, that's fine. I hadn't either. So to clarify, there are many different types of fuel that you can use to heat a home, and systems nowadays are increasingly using electricity and natural gas because they have a lower carbon impact than some of the traditional non-renewable petroleum-based sources, so the coal and crude of the world. So that said, traditionally, historically, homes were heated using petroleum-based liquid heating fuels, so crude and oil. And in order to stay in business, our client and its industry stakeholders ratified a resolution last year in November to commit the industry to converting from petroleum-based heating fuels to renewable liquid heating fuels. So that includes things like bioheat, renewable biofuel that comes from sources like soybeans and animal fats, et cetera. So the aim of this resolution was to pivot their industry to selling a product that would help combat climate change, but also keeping these businesses alive. And these businesses, for a bit of context, they are small, multi-generational family businesses that are really true economic engines for these small towns. And so you can kind of already begin to see how this engagement is addressing and touching on Kearney's 3 E's. So, first, we're really working to drive sustainable growth opportunities that will promote innovation, but also, continuing to support these local economies and these jobs. At the same time, right, we are working with this industry to help them develop a comprehensive implementation strategy to ensure that they are able to successfully achieve their goals, right? One of their primary goals is a net zero carbon future by 2050. And so finally, and I think this is a really interesting component that I've been engaged with quite directly, is a communication strategy that I've developed with this group, which strongly focuses on educating customers and lawmakers about how they can make sustainable purchases that are, both best for their wallets, but also that accelerate reducing, carbon footprints today. And a lot of, issues with electrification, it's great, and I think we hear about it a lot, but what's interesting is that the infrastructure requirements and capital investments for electric they're quite significant, whereas, this is a product, biofuels, bioheat, is available today and require very minimal changes to existing equipment. So I'll kind of pause there because I know we want to leave most time for Q&A, but happy to answer any questions during our session, and I'll hand it off to Elizabeth.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So when we talk about collaborations and the partnerships that we have at Kearney, it reminds me of one of the main reasons that I joined Kearney. And it was really because I felt like Kearney cared. And so the people at Kearney cared about each other, they cared about the recruits and the clients, but they really also cared about the global community. And so as we look at the next slide, one of the ways that we've shown how we tangibly reflect that care is through a partnership that we've had with Ashoka. And over the past 4 years, we've completed over 20 projects with social entrepreneurs to help in a variety of ways. So to highlight a couple of those, I know there's a lot on here, but we've helped impoverished children in Colombia, we've helped stroke survivors in Nigeria, we've empowered women in Indonesia, and it's really one of the ways that we're able to say, let's take the skills that we've developed in consulting and let's apply them to another group and another partnership so that we can really drive impact. In addition to programs like this, we also offer, and Will kind of previewed it a little bit, a social exchange, like an externship, a social impact externship. And so on the next slide, I did want to introduce that, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about the experience or what it means or what I was able to do, but I'll give you a quick brief now. So last year, I was selected as one of the first people to go through our externship program, and I spent 3 months in Argentina. And so this externship program is really designed to give those who are passionate about social change the opportunity to take time and really commit to an organization to help them to become a part of that organization and to drive that impact. And so I went down to Argentina. I was there for 3 months, and out of the 11 years that I've been in industry and consulting, it was one of the pivotal moments of my career. And so Libertate was the organization that I worked with. Their main priority was around disability awareness and disability inclusion. And so in Argentina, there's a big gap with companies and with governments being able to put programs and services in place to hire, to recruit, and really to make accommodations for people with disabilities. In addition, when you look at things like supply chains or marketing or even the way that businesses spend their time, it wasn't focused on disability. So their goal was really to drive awareness of that gap and to provide solutions for those companies and governments. So when I went down to Argentina, I was able to help that group and really make an impact in the way that they structured their business model to ensure that they'd be around to continue to help people in the years coming forward. I was also able to really help them drive, how do you engage with clients? And what are some of the best practices that we've learned from our time here at Kearney that they can put into place now to really make a difference in the engagements that they're having? In addition, I did become a part of their team. I still talk to them daily, even though it's been about a year, made friends for life, grew both professionally and personally. And I was able to tangibly see the difference that I was able to make in that community and that I'm able to still make as I help them out and they send me slides and things to review even today. So happy to talk more about that, but want to make sure we save some of those time for questions. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Will.
Great, thanks, Elizabeth. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I was going to suggest for folks in the Q&A, if you wanted to ask how often Elizabeth talks to the co-founders of Libertate, even a year out, that would be a good question that she already answered. It was really wonderful to see the relationships that you were able to build with them and the impact that you were able to have, even just from the conversations that I've had with them and you. Thought leadership. So we provide thought leadership by developing research and driving dialogue. And on this next page, you'll see just a handful of the white papers that we've published, from social innovation in the apparel industry in the top middle there, to gender inclusion in dead center there, to reductions of single-use plastic in the bottom right. On the right middle, you'll see reimagining the future of work and empowering youth. This was one of the many collaborations that we've had with the World Economic Forum. Another one of those collaborations is an initiative that I personally have the privilege to be working on right now. It is called Consumers Beyond Disposability, and it sits in the World Economic Forum's Future of Consumption platform. And it's an initiative that aims to enable and scale innovative models for reusable and refillable consumer goods and allow us to move beyond our reliance on single-use packaging. We bring together stakeholders from across the system, from big brands like P&G, Nestle, Unilever, PepsiCo, down to innovators like Loop. If you're familiar, they're a reusable packaging service that's been growing quite rapidly, and others like them. From city governments like New York and Paris to NGOs like Greenpeace, United Nations Environment Program, and the World Wildlife Fund, and others like retailers, logistics providers, and grassroots organizations. We are able to bring everybody together to collaborate on some of the biggest issues that are faced by those who are trying to push forward reuse and refill as alternative consumption models. I had the opportunity to come in when the initiative was just really getting off the ground and I was able to help grow the community and launch 3 working groups who are tackling some of the ecosystem's biggest concerns right now. I myself got to lead work on one of these problems, namely how to understand economic, environmental, and social viability of reuse systems. So this has involved developing a modeling framework to understand drivers of viability and scale, and developing an analysis to help test that framework out. And through the course of this, I've gotten to work with a ton of fantastic people from a huge variety of organizations that I probably would have never gotten the opportunity to meet and work so closely with. And I've also gotten the chance to expand my own skill set in a context where the ultimate goal is really around making the world better. It's environmentally through mitigating the waste crisis, and socially through providing opportunities to communities through these new and innovative models for reuse and refill. So right now we're working to bring everything that we've learned over the past few months and develop thought leadership that can help constituents continue to build these reuse systems. So that will hopefully be coming to a computer screen near you in the next months, assuming that I do my job well. I am happy to answer any questions. I know this is a pretty quick glimpse into it. I'm happy to answer any questions through the Q&A, but I'll now turn it over to Bennett, and we can talk a bit about firm building.
Great, thanks, Will. And having had the chance to work with you a bit on your work with the World Economic Forum, I too am really excited to see it come out this year at the probably going to be virtual Davos meeting. Really exciting stuff, and it's been awesome to be able to help you out with that. So in addition to some of the more formal pillars that we've just gone through, there's a part of Kearney that's focused on social impact at a local and an office level, right? So this is more the giving opportunities to consultants who maybe can't work on a project that's social impact or do an externship to still be involved socially in their communities. If we want to progress to the next slide. So as Will mentioned at the top, currently 93% of our employees say that social impact is an important aspect of this job to them, and 100% of our employees globally are supported by our social impact team. If we want to continue on. There are really 4 key areas where we as consultants can get involved outside of these more formal pillars in social impacts in our communities. The first is the pro bono and mentoring pillar. A prime example of this is actually something we're doing in the Chicago office right now it's a partnership with a company called Green on Racine, which works in the western portions of Chicago to help set up a food bank. We're helping them essentially through the entire process of setting operations. So that's going from helping to source the food all the way to how do they scale their business and grow in order to make the impact they're looking to drive, right? The second aspect of that is being able to help in research and insights more informally. This is part of what I did with Will, with his work on the Economic Forum. In between projects, I was brought on to help support some of the amazing analysis that he was doing. It was a great opportunity, one, to make an impact, but also to feel like a little bit of a break between project work, if you will, and a restoration of a little bit of energy and some awesome impact as well. The third aspect is externships, and I think Elizabeth touched on these really well earlier. In addition to some of the cool work that she did, one of my previous managers is currently actually working with a group in Malaysia, helping to electrify rural villages out there. So again, just a lot of amazing work in all sorts of different areas that you can do through these externship programs. And last, but certainly not least, are local events. And I'm really fortunate in the Chicago office, we've been continuing to push these even during coronavirus. This upcoming week, actually, we have a virtual walk with the UNCF to help fund college programs. In addition, we do work with the Red Cross, Habitat for Humanity, all sorts of other projects as well that are helping to give back to our local local communities through our office and on a global level as well. And I'll pass it off to, I believe, Lauren to discuss the next steps for our hiring process. Or maybe.
Perfect. No, it's okay. So I'd love to just dive into Q&A, and I think we've got a handful of questions here in the queue. So Will, I'm actually going to direct this first one to you. How does Kearney select nonprofits and organizations to partner with? Do you reach out or vice versa?
Yeah. So it's a bit of a mix. It kind of depends on the scale and the organization. So Ashoka, like Elizabeth mentioned, that's been a strategic partnership for a number of years. I can't say, whether we reach out to Ashoka or vice versa. I wouldn't be surprised either way. Often when we're doing pro bono work on the local level, it will have evolved either from somebody's passion in the office, and maybe they have a connection to an organization and they want to serve it in that way. Sometimes we have a client who sits on the board of an organization that could use some help, and we make connections that way. It can happen, any which way that those connections are made. I would say, though, in terms of selection, we do, of course, have criteria for where we want to invest our time. I wish that we had, all the resources to serve all the wonderful organizations out in the world that are doing great work. But we really want to kind of maximize the impact that we can have. And so we think when it comes down to our 3 E's, economic viability, I'm saying that so much on my project, it just came out of my mouth. Economic development, energy and sustainability, and education and workforce. This is where we feel like we have the best expertise. We can bring the best of Kearney to bear with these organizations. And so we like to do most of our pro bono work in a way that aligns with those 3 E's. We want to do work where we can really have the most impact and develop, long-term relationships over time, and a couple other criteria that we have that help us make decisions about who to work with and who to partner with.
That's awesome. So you don't just pick them out of a hat. You have some good criteria, and
yep.
This is thought through.
Exactly.
No surprise. Good. Bennett, this next question I'll direct at you. Besides assigned projects as a business analyst at Kearney, how are entry-level members able to get involved on social impact projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can actually speak to this. So my first 2 weeks, I was fortunate enough to learn a lot about the SI practice through Will, actually, who is also in the Chicago office. I had just been onboarded and hadn't been assigned a formal project yet, so he reached out to me to get involved with some social impact work that was going on in terms of setting up a way to audit our social impact practices and make sure that we're holding ourselves to a higher standard. So he reached out to me, and I was fortunate on that front, but I think every office has support from the social impact team, and there's an opportunity to reach out to them and plug into work that they do. In addition to plugging in through social impact, most offices have what's called a PC&D team, which controls office events and puts out communications about upcoming office activities. Usually there's a PC&D charity lead who's involved in helping set up social impact activities for the office as a whole. So you can get involved that way on the local level.
Cool, thanks, Bennett. And on a couple pages previously, you all would not have noticed this, but I was on the end there for Habitat for Humanity. So definitely, if you're interested in getting involved, right, you just raise your hand, and in plenty of ways. So thank you for sharing that, Bennett. Elizabeth, I will direct this next one at you. What % of Kearney employees participate in the externship program, and when is the most common time to do it? Additionally, are they alongside projects or in place of them?
Great questions. So in terms of percentage, I won't be able to give you an actual % in terms of the number of people. It is still a relatively new project. So when I was there, I was one of the first ones to do it, and there were about 5 of us who did it at the same time last June-ish. So still relatively new, but lots of opportunities for you to get involved and to raise your hand and say that's something that you're interested in. In regards to the best timing, it's one of those, it really is a personal decision as to when it is that's best for you to do this. And there's going to be so many things going on in your own life that it's one of those you have to balance it around your commitments and are you available to go on an international trip or a domestic trip or take that time. So the way that it works, just for an additional context, is that you have the option to take a 3-month leave of absence so that you can completely focus on the externship that you're doing. And so if you're not doing it while you're doing the project work, it is a standalone where that is your one priority while you're in that experience. Was there another part of that question, Lauren?
You got them all.
Wonderful.
Okay. So this one is for anyone who knows it. Are the white papers available for anyone to read, and how might one find them?
can take it with a bad answer. I think it'd be wonderful if we had on our Kearney website a white paper portal where you could just go through. And so maybe by saying that to you all, it'll happen, right? We don't have that, unfortunately. But what you can do is you can go on the Kearney website and you can go to the different practices and different kind of functions, and you can see what kind of papers they've put out publicly. If you have specific desires to see some of the ones that were on the page before, all you need to Google is the title and Kearney. But that would be, I would suggest going through the Kearney website and then just kind of navigating through the different practices in different industry areas.
Perfect. Thank you. Elena, this next question is for you. How does Kearney measure success in social impact work? I imagine it's different than traditional commercial work.
With success in terms of kind of what we're looking to do, or just what it looks like, what we kind of the standard we hold ourselves to from a project perspective?
Probably a little bit of both.
A little bit of both. Okay. So I can speak, for this project specifically, it is very much treated as equally as it would be, I think, any other project. We, had a really robust team. We were doing interviews. We worked with over 150 stakeholders. So I think our expectation and our high bar is no different for these projects for sure. And I think what's really awesome, speaking actually to kind of a bit of the previous question as well, there, are a lot of the information that we've, research we've done, work we've done with this project, we will be incorporating into white papers going forward. And so I don't know if that's something that I'm sure you've heard about on some other webinar, but our firm's commitment to IC and sharing that knowledge broadly is a very strong one. And so I think that's also just something that's very cool from a perspective. It's not just like Elena gets to work on this project and learn all these things, but we as a firm are committed to both teaching everyone else in the firm, but also beyond that, sharing that knowledge.
If I can add a little bit before the next question,
Please.
And maybe invite Elizabeth too as well if she has thoughts that this provokes. But I think also in this question is something interesting, which is that for these projects, it tends to be a somewhat more complex or perhaps counterintuitive to a consultant brain, because we're so trained often on kind of economic outcomes, which are very measurable, quantifiable. And often when you go on these projects, the outcomes that you're driving towards are not economic and often difficult to quantify. And so a lot of folks who do this work find their skill sets tested in interesting and new ways because they're tasked with measuring the success of their work in vastly different ways than they may be used to, because they're working with different organizations who have different goals. And how you're defining success is as nuanced and as varied as those goals will be, depending on the organization.
I think that's actually a really good point. And I'll just hop in, which is like, that's something that we've entirely experienced on this project. And not only just are the goals we're working towards less tangible, but the client's expectations, what they're asking of us, what they want, the conversations we're having, it isn't necessarily going to be, how are you saving $50 million? It's, how can we get the word out? How can we educate people? How can we build, streets campaign? And it's a really cool, fun project, but it's challenging. And so, yeah, Elizabeth, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Sure. I think this was an interesting conversation. It's brought up a lot of different things and memories from my project as well. So when I think about how it's measured, it's very similar to what you're saying, Elena, as well. But one thing I will note is I found that it was similar to my project work because what I want to do at the end of the day is drive impact for my client. The way that impact is driven is going to look different, as Will was saying, especially from an economic perspective versus what their goals are. But at the end of the day, I want to meet this client where they're at and say, how can I help you? What is it that you need? And what you find with clients, and especially in these situations, ones who aren't used to working with consultants, is that sometimes they don't really know what they need. And so the first the first challenge that you have is really finding the root cause of why they need you in the first place. So when I went down to Argentina, the organization actually recruited me because they wanted sales and marketing help. When I got down there, I was like, okay, great. What's your mission? Because I want to build your sales and marketing program around there. They're like, what's the mission? And I was like, okay, fine, not a problem. What's your vision? And they're like, what's the vision? They're like, not a problem. What's your business plan? And they're like, why do we need a business plan? What's that going to do? They're like, all right, so we need to start in a different place than where I assumed. So let's go back to the foundation and let's really start building that. And so success, when I started the project, looked a lot different than what it actually ended up being and what I would have thought I would have measured myself on. The other thing I'd say is that, and to Will's point about the economics as well, when I got there and I was asking them about their financials and where they were currently, they're like, our budget is $8,000. And I'm like, for the project, for the month? And they're like, no, I mean, that's what we got. That's all, that's the year, that's everything. And so normally in projects, that's not even an like that's a rounding error. And so coming into it, it was just such different stakes because you're like, the decisions that I make are not only going to be whether or not they grow from 8 million to 12 million, it's going to be, are they around in 6 months? And so if I make a decision on a client that has $8,000 budget and I make the wrong decision, then that impacts them in terms of, are they going to be sustainable? And so there's a whole different level of like trust that had to be built. There's a different level of commitment. There's just a different set of considerations that I had to take into account. And also a different set of knowledge base in terms of the people that you're sometimes working with in these social ventures are more, I know the ladies that I worked with in particular were very passionate about what they did. And they were very much liberal arts majors when they were in school, and they just hadn't had much exposure to business. And so it was really grounding them in that perspective and saying, let's combine. And it can't be all business because I understand that it's not all about profit for them. And so it's really understanding what are the key metrics for them, what are they measuring themselves on, but still bringing your perspective of, let's make sure that these are sound business goals. Anything else anyone would add? Okay.
It's hard to top that passion. That's great. And I think it's clear coming through just what an impactful experience you had. I know we've talked about it, so it's great to hear. Staying along the lines of passion, but shifting gears a little bit, I'd love for both Elena and Bennett to answer this question. What keeps you working at Kearney? What do you like about it?
I can take it first.
Yeah.
For me, I really think that there are like two major things that keep me working here. One is, and this may stray slightly away from just social impact. The first I would say is definitely the people I've had the chance to work with. Will being one of them, obviously, but so many others across my time with the firm. I have been just kind of blown away by the caliber of intelligence that you come across, but also the passion, not only for social impact, but for our clients and our projects generally. You know, I feel like a real investment in each other, but also in the work that we do that keeps me coming to work every morning. I think that the second side of it is also the impact that I get to see from the work that I do, whether that's the social impact side of the work that I've done previously, or whether that's the project work I do day to day. Getting to see that I'm making a real tangible change in the lives of my clients and the work they do, in the lives of their customers, whoever those might be. I think Kearney offers me the chance to really see the impact that I can make on the world and on the businesses that I'm working with.
A great answer. I hate that I have to go second. But no, I think I would go everything that Bennett said. He took words out of my mouth. So I guess to come up with some new answers to that. I think at some point on one of the slides, we talked about the Energy Transition Institute, and my background is I have an undergrad and master's in environmental science, energy, sustainability, and I actually had never planned on being a consultant. But now that I'm here, I really miss being able to do research, to write. I mean, obviously, we make decks and we write, but doing really, kind of research heavy, literature reviews. And so I was able to work with the Energy Transition Institute, for a couple of weeks in between projects and help them on some of their fact books and work on executive summaries and do my own research and learn about some of these topics and that are right in my wheelhouse, but also just get back to some of that, literature review, researchy academic stuff that I don't get as much every day. So I think, from a social impact perspective, the thought leadership that we do and that we are involved in through some of these different programs that Kearney has, it's really awesome. And then I think, and maybe this isn't quite social impact, but it's something that I know Kearney has really been pushing, especially with COVID, but in general, is like the impact we're making for our own people at home. And so, we've been doing a ton of work when it comes to, diversity, social impact, donating to various different things that, causes that are very relevant today. Black Lives Matter, sending money over to, Lebanon, et cetera. And so I think that like, it's really clear that this isn't just something we are showing you on a screen. And I promise I wasn't told to say this. Like we say this and then we go do it. And that's really important for me. And I think you'll see so many stats about like millennials and the importance of making an impact, both like with their purchases, but also at work. Like they really want to make an impact in addition to like making money and having a job and career. And Kearney is really a place that lets you do that. And I don't think I knew that or fully grasped it when I took the job, but in my time here, it's really become very evident that is the place I'm working at, which is awesome.
I love it. I knew I'd heard the passion from those answers, and I wasn't disappointed. Will, I'm going to send this one your way. Following time as a generalist, can you select social impact as a sector to specialize in?
That is a wonderful question because it really kind of speaks to our vision for social impact. We want it to be a place where any consultant who has a passion and interests can spend their full-time work and, have it be, their platform. Right now, we're still kind of in the early stages of building it towards that. As you can see, we've done a lot, we do a lot. We're not quite at the place where you can formally specialize, despite me saying that I do, but I informally specialize. So hopefully very, very soon, as soon as possible, you'll have a good answer for that question. I would say it doesn't take that long to make it as much a part of your work as you're able to. So even if you're doing your full-time client work outside of a typical social impact or sustainability realm, although I would argue that the vast majority of our client work does involve social impact and sustainability principles that we're working on kind of bringing to bear in the diversity of kind of client work that we do. But the things that you can get involved in outside of your kind of day-to-day client work is really where you might want to get going from day one, just like Bennett did, just like Elena did, and start to get involved in your office or with the global team and start, carving out that spot for yourself.
And just to jump in and add too, I really do think one thing that is unique about Kearney, given its size, is that there is a lot of space for you to carve out like what you want to do in the work that you do. Like for example, me working with Will, like I was able to say to the staffer that, hey, like I'm really invested and interested in this project. I'd like to stay on for a little while to see the work through. I was able to do that, and being able to reach out and speak up and really get involved in what you want to do, I think is a unique aspect of being at a firm like Kearney, and it's something that I personally have tried to take advantage of as much as I possibly can.
All right, Bennett, don't mute yourself too quickly here. I've got a question for you. Can you please speak to the onboarding process?
Generally?
Yes.
Of course.
I think so.
So this is still pretty fresh in my mind. So my onboarding process, your first week is, and I can't recall the exact name of what it is, but it's essentially a speed training about all this essential tools as a consultant, right? So your first couple of days are reviewing what the consulting process looks like, how Kearney specifically approaches problem solving, Then you have like tutorial days on Excel, PowerPoint, and internal Kearney tools to sort of catch you up to speed. Then you roll on to what's called your apprenticeship, which is your first month to 2 months, which is real project experience, but a little bit light, right? Because you're brand new, you're still not quite certain what's going on, at least I know I wasn't. And it's a chance for you to start to stretch your wings while still having sort of a safety net to help you out, right? And so this is a time where your manager will lean in, help you out a little bit more as you start to ramp up. Then after your first month or two, you go to what's called the Experience Forum, which historically has taken place at different places all over the world. That may look slightly different in the coming years with coronavirus. Jury's still out on that one. But it's a chance for you to, one, connect with analysts and associates from all across the US and the world. At mine, we had represented people from not only the Chicago office and the New York office, but from like our Oslo office, our Frankfurt office, our London office as well. It was a great opportunity to meet people from all over the world and get to hear about their experiences. And during that experience forum, you go through different trainings to sort of synthesize all the things you've learned from your first week of training and from your project work into like real concrete learnings that you can take back into the field after your experience forum to really ramp up as a full analyst, or I guess in this case, analyst. Did I do it justice?
I think so, and I think you brought in the uncertainties related to COVID, so I thought that was perfect, spot on. So I'm not sure who's closest to the Social Impact Catalyst Fund, so I'll put this question out there and anyone can jump in. Regarding the Catalyst Fund, how is the extent of funding determined for employee-led initiatives? Is there an application process for certain projects? And if so, what percentage of applications are typically funded by Kearney? You can tell this is a consulting-minded group because they're asking about numbers a lot.
I can take this one. I'm not sure if anybody else has. Elizabeth, have you submitted a Catalyst Fund? No. So the Catalyst Fund is an annual program, and it's a structured process. We just launched the 3rd edition of it just about a week or two ago. And essentially the process is you have an idea that you think could be great and have a lot of impact, whether that's internal or external. You get a team of people around you. You submit an application for the Catalyst Fund when the application period rolls around. And then there is kind of a, what you might expect from kind of a competition style funding event where applications are judged by kind of a panel of judges. You're able to kind of present your idea, get questions asked, and then ultimately each application is kind of judged based on a rubric that's quite similar actually to what I described as our pro bono criteria. And then the winners get the funding. So I think, I don't know what percentage of applications. I don't have an answer for that. It's completely dependent on how many applications are submitted in a given year and how much funding is available. I think, did I get everything there?
You did. Thank you. All right, one more question, Elizabeth. I'm going to send this your way for a rapid answer because we've got just about a minute left. Can you talk about mentorship at the firm?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the great things about the firm is that everyone who's in the firm, every consultant in the firm gets a mentor. And so as you have your mentor, they're a great person to talk to you about what is it that you want to do in terms of your career? What does your career pathing look like? As you get feedback, you'll have multiple managers throughout different projects that you're working on. So in a year, you may have one manager, you may have up to 4 or 5 managers. And so they really help consolidate that feedback and make sure that they're focused on your development and on the things that you need to do and need to work on. And so they're really your advocate when they go into the performance reviews, as well as someone that you can reach out to whenever you have any life changes or questions that you have about the firm in general. Was that a good 1 minute?
Yeah, speedier than I thought, and I double muted myself. Cool. With that, I want to be mindful of everybody's time here. Know that we are Friday afternoon, 5:45 for some of you on the East Coast. So thank you to everyone for joining. Really, really appreciate the time. Again, if you have additional questions that were not answered, please feel free to send them to careers.ug@kearney.com. But otherwise, thank you to our panelists, and have a great weekend, everyone. Talk soon.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.